This episode of Angles is brought to you by Richmond Vona Personal Injury Attorneys. Expect high-level communication, transparency, and cutting-edge technology to keep your case moving. Expect a legal team that's laser-focused and moves fast to get the results you deserve. When the unexpected happens, expect Richmond Vona. Learn more at richmondvona.com. 192 Seneca Street, Buffalo, New York. Welcome to Angles, the podcast where we dig into the stories behind impactful people and explore the sharp turns, daily decisions, and defining moments that shape how they got to where they are and how they keep moving forward. I'm John Richmond, and every week I sit down with guests who are building bold, meaningful lives and careers in Buffalo and beyond. If you enjoy these conversations, please hit follow, subscribe, drop a comment, or share the episode. It's a simple way to help us grow with the community and keep these stories coming. Today on Angles, we sit down with Emily Martin, founder of Ally HR Partners and a trusted HR consultant for businesses across Buffalo. After pivoting from meteorology to human resources, Emily discovered that strong culture starts with prepared, decisive leadership. We cover the message she's cleaned up, the power of communication and accountability, and why tough decisions often drive long-term growth. Stick around for a practical dive into people strategy that truly resonates. Let's get into it. All right, Emily Martin of Ally HR, welcome to Angles. How you doing?
Good.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm super excited. I mean, obviously we've been working together and known each other for a while now. We've always had great conversations, whether it's about leadership or kind of HR related topics. I mean, they seem to obviously overlap. So excited to kind of dig into it with you today. And I figured maybe the first thing to do is allow you, like, if you wouldn't mind, like introducing yourself and kind of talk a little bit about, why you decided to start Ally HR, kind of like what led you to make that decision, and maybe even touch a little bit on what the early days were like.
Yeah, I mean, probably like most people that start their own business, I just got sick of working for other people. I did a lot of in-house HR work. So working inside of HR departments, inside of organizations for like 10 years, and then worked for a business that sold payroll services and then HR consulting services for their clients, which were mostly small businesses, for a couple years. And shortly after I started there, I was promoted to run the small HR consulting team. And through that process, I kind of learned two things. One, very few business owners really have any idea what they're doing, at least in quite a few areas. So they're not necessarily especially smart, in all the areas of business. Um,
Guilty.
yeah, so that dissolved a lot of the myth I had, like, I'm not smart enough, like I don't know what I'm doing. Who am I to start a business? And two, by getting to run that team, I learned, the kind of concept of consulting and how to do it, and just thought like I can do this myself and do it better. And so that's what kind of led me to take the leap. And yeah, so I did, and then definitely was the best decision I've ever made. And I had some clients that came over with me right away. And the early days were awesome. I'm sure, as you have experienced, or you did experience when you started the firm, like it's like a drug. Like you run out of bed every day and you're so excited to create. And, it's just so new and fresh and exciting, and the possibilities are endless. And so it's been great. And I just love doing it because I get to help people. Most of my clients, like you and Richmond Von, are in the local community, and like then living here, it's really nice to just have that purpose that's tied to something I also love doing.
Yeah, I will say I might disagree with loving the early days of starting the business. I mean, it's right. I think you'd agree, right? It's like this really weird kind of back and forth where I agree with you. It is like a drug. You barely sleep. You're running on adrenaline. You're super excited. But I question whether or not I would want to go back to those days just because of how extremely difficult it is. And you could argue that it gets more difficult as you grow your business over the years and you scale. Um, and maybe there is something beautiful about, being ignorant, like in the beginning, and how little you actually know. But like, I mean, did you think that was scary in the beginning? Like, were you at all like apprehensive or scared?
One of the biggest differences between what you started and what I started is, I'm a solopreneur. Like my business is primarily a lifestyle business. So to me, it's really a means to an end, which is like facilitating financially and freedom and autonomy and time wise the other things I want to do in my life. But so the stakes aren't as high as I guess, and it's probably not as stressful as what you were doing, which required, upfront funding and loans and all these things that I really didn't need. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was stressful, but I guess I wasn't going as big, John, and that's something I admire about you compared to myself because I wasn't going as big, so that I couldn't fail as big either, I guess.
I guess, but I mean, look, I'll say this. I mean, I have a big support system, like even just obviously outside the firm, but inside the firm, I have Keith and I have now so many people that are accountable and that we can rely on, and you're not just doing it by yourself. I think it sounds scary, to do it all by yourself the way you're doing it. Like, not for nothing, I mean, because really, you just, the only person you have to rely on is you.
I like it that way, I guess. I trust myself.
Yeah.
Maybe a different trust, prerogatives. I don't know.
Yeah, if you don't trust yourself, you probably shouldn't start a business.
No, no, you shouldn't.
That'd be a huge problem. Going back, I mean, I don't think I've ever actually even asked you this. You talked about kind of your professional journey to leading up to starting the business, but why HR to begin with? Like, why consulting to begin with, going back to when you were younger?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a choice to do consulting. And honestly, I don't even really think there was a conscious choice to do HR. I think when I was going to school, I don't think HR programs were very popular or established. So I actually originally went to school for meteorology, which is totally
Did
not.
not know that.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to be like standing in a hurricane and reporting from hurricanes. But then I kind of realized that wasn't really something I would be happy doing. And so I just kind of stumbled into communication studies major with a business minor and did an internship and then had some connections that got me my first job as like an HR admin at a manufacturing firm. And it sounded like something I would like to do and obviously aligned with what I went to school for and I learned some of my strengths as a person and I just kind of, I don't know, fell in love with it and stumbled into it. So, and I kept going because I guess I did enjoy it. And I think I learned that I kind of have a knack for people related things. Not just like employment law or, being compliant, which is arguably the most boring and easiest part of the job.
Yeah, I got to imagine that walking into some businesses without mentioning any names is kind of like standing in a hurricane when you first get there.
You know what? Actually, I never thought about that, but yeah, it's very similar. It's like you get to be the voice of reason and making sense of things in a lot of chaos, kind of like, yeah, reporting from a hurricane. I love that.
So what's your approach when you walk into working with a new partner, right? Because I got to imagine you're brought in under all different sets of circumstances and maybe many times when things aren't going well or there needs to be big changes made. And I've told you before, I sometimes think, man, I feel bad for you. You're walking in almost seen as like the hatchet woman coming into like the new business. But how do you approach kind of, each client and kind of tailor your work towards their individual needs?
Yeah. So the biggest difference between clients, I think, starting out is like there's clients like you, and you guys wisely did this, where before you really, as you were starting out and before you had many employees and things got too messy, you spent the time and investment up front in getting ahead of, things like processes and procedures and rules and whatever, and structure, to then build on top of. A lot of clients will call me after they've existed for a couple years and they have 10, 20, 30, sometimes like 60 employees. They've never really had HR, and now there's a mess or a crisis that they need help with. That's kind of prompted them to either need help with that specific situation or, realize like, oh yeah, we don't know what we don't know. We should start taking this seriously. But I will say most clients end up in the same spot. So everybody, and this is, I think, just HR is a super, at least I think, like not a well-respected function in business. And there's a lot of reasons for that, including things like the Jumbotron event we just saw at the Coldplay concert. I was like, oh, this is such bad PR for the HR. But so they don't take it that seriously, and everybody thinks they know enough, and or as much as any HR person. But getting into every business, I will always listen and agree to solve the immediate problem that clients have, but it usually always gets back to the same foundational, like, okay, this is an issue of lack of accountability or lack of structure or lack of expectation setting, and how can we start to build up some of the infrastructure in that way to cut a lot of these problems off at the pass. So most
Sure.
clients are really at the end of the day, like fundamentally very similar, I would say.
Right. I agree. I think unfortunately a lot of businesses don't respect HR the way they should. And I believe HR deserves, a huge seat at the table. Why do you think that HR deserves such a big, big seat at the table and deserves to play such a big role?
Yeah, well, I just a couple months ago or a month ago, I shoot an episode of my podcast on this topic. So if you want to listen to that, you can. But I think, well, I will say also, a lot of it is there aren't a lot of great HR people, and I think because a lot of HR people aren't business-minded people for whatever reason, hopefully maybe the degree programs are starting to, include more general business curriculum in them to help that. So there's some like valid reason I think for it not being respected for sure, and that's a big part of the problem. But it deserves a big seat at the table because it does not matter how good your product is, how good your marketing is, how good your systems are, until AI totally takes over. Have to have people using those systems, selling that product, working together every day to make or sell or service whatever it is your business is doing. And people, if not managed properly or selected properly or functioning properly, can destroy the best, plans that you have. So it's
Yeah, I look at HR under the same umbrella as culture. Like, a lot of people use culture as a buzzword, but in reality, really, culture is the foundation of everything. It's the key to success. I can't overstate that enough. And if you don't have the policies, the procedures, if you don't know how to hire, if you don't understand, when it's time to fire, and everything kind of that runs in between in that life cycle of any team member or employee, I think it's impossible to create like, that ultimate culture. And I think it's it's brutal and it's a real shame when you see businesses who are like, especially small businesses, when they're like, okay, like we don't want to do this. Who's somebody in here who can just like file the paperwork and handle the admin? Like, and it's just they don't understand how much they're stunting their growth.
Yeah, and I'll go even bigger than the word culture, which I think you know this because I think you're a Patrick Lencioni fan, and he has a book called The Advantage, and it's basically why organizational health is so important. And so I think health of the organization is something that people don't consider because again, the structure can be great, and even if you have the best people and the best processes, if there's bureaucracy and politics and drama, which is all stuff that goes back to culture and health, like again, it's going to be totally dysfunctional in executing it. So, for,
You obviously you get to deal with and work with alongside a lot of different leaders. Um, how have you seen maybe leaders use not just policy, but maybe organizational health to really drive growth within the organization?
yeah, well, I mean, I think healthy organizations exist because they have healthy leaders, which means like having a healthy sense of their own capabilities and strengths, but also their own limitations. So, being able to hire and delegate out to others things that they're not really great at, and actually being able to do that in reality and not just say they're doing it and then micromanage. And then, I think it just scales down from there, but it really, I know everyone says like the cliche term, it starts at the top, but it really does start at the top. And even recently, I've been really reflecting on that fact with some organizations I work with. And, I work with clients for a lot of my clients stay with me for years and years. And we try to affect change over time. And with some of them, whether I say it to them or not, like I become personally frustrated or really just like disappointed because we get to a point where we aren't able to affect any more change. And it's really because that leadership is, not changing or not making the changes that they need to make. And so the organization definitely reflects that and is limited by that. Yeah.
So what do you do in that situation? Do you call them out?
I do, me, like I,
Yeah, I bet you do. Well,
yeah,
they probably need to hear it.
yeah, and they love it and they hate it, as I'm sure you have at times when we've worked together. But if they don't, it's at some point if there's enough pushback and they don't want to hear it, then we try to just do the best we can around it. But But yeah, it's definitely, I mean, a lot of my engagements end up becoming really leadership coaching and mentoring and advising engagements over time. So that's not really something that is sold in the, service itself, but almost all of them end up becoming that because as you probably we have experienced too, like I end up working with clients on a lot of like very stressful emotional decisions, either about legacy employees or whatever it might be, and they learn there's a lot of trust developed in that, and so you become a trusted person for a lot of things, and so yeah, it becomes that, and that's how it kind of evolves and gets into greater change over time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, when we first approached you, and it was really early on when our employment attorney had actually recommended you to us, and this is years ago now. I remember in the beginning, like I always knew you're going to be really good at what you do. I would question sometimes, like, how is she going to have the effects that she needs to have when she's outside the organization, when she's not here all day, every day. I didn't anticipate that there was going to be, we would have such good rapport and be able to talk so much about like leadership and all that kind of stuff because you spend so much time studying it and, seeing people in the community. So you can kind of learn from their mistakes or their successes. But I will say that I think it's actually an advantage to have somebody on the outside because you can, remove the emotion from some of the decisions, which, obviously you don't want. I don't think you should totally remove the emotion, and we're always like trying to like make sure you understand kind of what all the stakes are and kind of what really is happening. But do you consider that's kind of be an advantage to be able to help teams from the outside and be able to have kind of like that maybe like that clearer perspective?
Yeah, that's definitely what people are really paying for and the huge value of what I do. I mean, I go in all the time where clients are afraid to help or to deliver some like disciplinary action or terminate someone, and we get done and they're like, "Oh my God," and they survive. And they're like, "How do you do this? Why do you decide to do this all day? Like this is so crazy and awful." And I said, "Listen, I'm not emotionally involved, so it's easy for me. Now, I still make sure to bring empathy with me and I think have just naturally a lot of empathy for people and their situations, but I mean, I think it's kind of really nice to realize and find like I always say clients are on a spectrum of like either being completely devoid of empathy and being super black and white and just business oriented, or they're way too on the other end where they need to be brought back to this middle where, hey, this is a business at the end of the day, and although some of these decisions may not be in the best interest of these individuals, you have to make sure you consider the business interest because there will be no individuals in the business if you don't do that enough over time. So I do see it as my job to always bring people to the center, and more often than not, I would say it's coming from a too empathetic and sympathetic place back to like this is your business, this is your livelihood, this is about money at the end of the day, right? And or
Yeah.
product. Yeah.
It's like if you're on one side of the spectrum as the leader and you're seen as somebody who is just a complete sociopath and you don't care at all about anybody, that's horrible. You don't want to be that person. I sometimes think that the default is to think that the employer doesn't care at all. But then on the other side of the coin, you could be this super empathetic person and just it's very clear that somebody just can't be part of the organization anymore, but you let it linger and linger and linger. And then what you don't realize until usually when it's too late is that the other great people who want to be there are just so worn out by the person or people who should have, been kindly asked to leave, weeks or months or years ago in some situations that you then have eroded the trust with everybody else. So yeah, being in the middle is huge, but it's hard, right? I mean, I don't, again, unless you're a sociopath, like, I don't care who you are. If you're not nervous or if you're not feeling a little bit bad going in to tell somebody they can't be there anymore, I don't understand you.
And I still do. I just had to do an investigation yesterday, and I walked in and I expected this person to look much different in things, and I just like felt so bad. But that's what a leader is. It's understanding that like feelings and people do matter, but they aren't the only thing that matters. And making the hard decisions and doing the hard things, knowing that fact. But yes, it often doesn't. Win you the popular vote with people, and you can certainly never expect everyone to understand, and that's something I see too where these leaders want to be able to explain their position and make sure everybody feels good about it and agrees with it, and that's just a fallacy. That's not going to ever happen.
Yeah, I'll say this, that's something too. Like when I started off running the firm and you're learning to be a leader every day. And I think every day about like all the mistakes I've made and I wonder about the mistakes I'm going to make. But, the one thing that's tough and it kind of goes hand in hand with what we're talking about is I think a lot of leaders or entrepreneurs, business owners, whatever, in the beginning, they think, okay, I got to get everyone's buy in, everyone has to agree, and then we make this decision. And in reality, you need to more so have the mindset of, yes, I'm going to collect feedback from the appropriate people who have. Not just an opinion, but have some sort of expertise in this area or can really offer something. And then we're going to make a decision. And even though it might be unpopular with some, we need to have buy-in and we move forward. And I think that's something that I've learned along the way. And I'm sure you've kind of learned different lessons like that as well, especially when it comes to, working with different leaders and having to guide them through really tough decisions.
Yeah, for sure. Like I've said, and maybe just to put it a different way, all of my engagements become coaching engagements for sure with leadership, whether it's the owner or the top, tier of leadership. And it's just honestly like empowering them to do these things. Um, and yeah, it's super great and rewarding. They just need to be told it's okay, usually.
Yeah. Well, it can be lonely. As a leader, I was watching a podcast from somebody that I respect within the legal space, and the quote was, "I don't know why anyone would want to be a leader." And I disagree with that, but I get the sentiment, right? Like it's all eyes on you. You're the hero or the villain, and oftentimes it's the villain. So it's great that you're there to support people. Let me ask you this though. So in dealing with so many leaders, especially here in Buffalo, what do you think are like maybe I don't want to put a number on it, but like the top character traits or I guess maybe like yeah, I'd say character traits that make somebody like a really good leader. It could even be practices, like their top
Yeah.
practices.
Um, so I think the first is, and I'll just like use the first words that come to mind. I'm sure there's better words for
Yeah,
this.
that's fine.
Like the ability to be responsive instead of reactive. So that's definitely a mistake I see leaders make all the time where and probably to be an entrepreneur, you have to be someone that is able and willing to act quickly, and without all the, facts at play. So it sometimes maybe is a complete opposing character trait of what it really means to start a business and be an entrepreneur. But yeah, just like the ability to just sit in your seat for a minute after something happens, and talk to your experts or your kind of like round table of people that you trust and have put in place to bounce things off to make sure you're not being emotional and reacting out of emotion. So I would say across the board, if I could give advice to most of my clients, that's it a lot of the time. And also, yeah, I would say something we already talked about, but uh, the ability to be not be to be okay with not being liked and not being popular, like that's extremely important again because you should definitely not be in a leadership role if you are uncomfortable with making decisions that are hard and difficult and that not everyone's going to like, because then you're going to be a bad leader and you're not going to be able to really ever make any decisions. So I guess those would be my top two and most often like coached, attributes as well.
Yeah, I admit like I struggle with that at times, right? You really do want to be liked. Like you, of course, like who doesn't want to be liked, but and you want people to respect you and maybe more so, of course, to respect than being liked. And so you have to make some really tough decisions and you have to set that aside. And I think that can be the toughest part, right? Because no matter when these tough decisions come down, you know, some people are going to be pissed, and maybe a lot of people are going to be pissed, even if that over time they're going to realize it was the best move. It can be brutal and it can keep you up at nights. But I think that maybe this is just me, but like over time doing it more and more, it's not that you still, it's not like you don't care anymore what other people think because you do, but you learn to kind of check that quicker.
Yeah. That's probably a good third attribute to throw in there is the ability to learn. I mean, that's one of the most frustrating common attributes of my most frustrating clients. It's like we've been here before so many times and you continue to make the same decisions that clearly have been mistakes in the past that I'm also reminding you of right now, and you still want to make the same decision.
Why do
That's
you think people do that?
it's probably like having children, which I don't have yet, but um I think it's just like most things, fear, and again, not being able to sit back and like realize, although this may be a bad immediate reaction, right? Like when you let someone go, you're gonna have to like watch them cry, and they might go post like a negative social media post about your business or even you personally, but realizing like that's okay, and it's just going to fade into the ether long term, and probably this person will reflect on this decision someday and actually be thankful to you for it, because if you didn't feel like they were a fit, they definitely were experiencing they weren't a fit. They just were too afraid to like take the leap to go do something else, or go find another job, and you really just helped redirect them and did them a favor. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's just fear, of the immediate negative repercussions, or just
I think the fear, yeah, I think the fear also comes from the unknown. So especially when you're making what seems like an impossible decision and the data is really unclear, um, it can be really, I think for some people, and even me, I've had this in the past, like it almost feels like temporarily paralyzing. You're like, oh crap, like what do I do in this situation? Um, and I would like in those situations, I remember I'd either talk to you, I'd talk to my CEO coach, I'd talk to people internally, talk to as many people as possible. Sometimes I think you talk to too many people, because it can cloud the
answer you want, but you're not getting.
yeah, I think so. I think it's important to do this, right? Sometimes like it that could be what it is, right? You're just waiting for somebody to agree with you, which is not good. But say you're searching for the answer to that question and you're having a really difficult time. I think the better move is to search for the framework under which to make the decision. And so you can find like, so if you have a very specific question or problem, it's going to be, I mean, maybe you can Google it or use AI to try to figure it out, but like really it's about going to the best leaders, the leaders you respect the most in the world. What are their frameworks for decision making? And usually you can find it. And like I remember I did this one time, and Jeff Bezos has this thing where he's like basically like I just like imagine I'm 80 years old, and am I going to regret not doing this, or am I going to regret doing this? So like focusing on kind of like the long-term impact. And I think it can help, right? Because most of these decisions, again, it's a Bezos thing, is most of these things are two-way doors. Like you can reverse them if you need to.
Yeah, true. Yeah. And it's kind of, I don't know. I'm thinking about when you are going to say something to someone, you're supposed to ask, is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? You could probably use the framework for most decisions as well. Like, is this a decision based on integrity and based on truth and facts? Am I being kind and doing it? And is it necessary to do? And that probably will get you there most of the
Yeah.
time.
Well, I also say I adopted the 24-hour rule with certain when it comes to conversations or emails or whatever, like fighting that impulse to like walk over into somebody's office or to fire off an email. And 9 times out of 10, when you let the 24 hours go by, you don't even care anymore.
Yeah, exactly. That's good. You know what that is? That's maturity, John. That's the
Yeah.
attitude we're describing here. It's like learning from your mistakes and like watching trends over time, and like yeah, having the self-awareness to like stop yourself when you know that you're getting emotional.
We'll be right back after a word from our partners.
After an accident, life can be scary, stressful, tricky. You need Richmond Bona to help navigate the process, because getting a life-changing settlement can not only take time, it can take an emotional toll. The team at Richmond Bona provides high levels of support through all the ins and outs, so you get the settlement you need and the new beginning you deserve.
When the unexpected happens.
Expect Richmond Bona.
Now back to the conversation. I didn't say it always works, but like most, like more times than not these days it works. Um, so when you think about like the Buffalo landscape, because I know you can do work, kind of throughout the state if you wanted to, but I know you take a lot of pride in focusing on working with leaders and businesses here in the community. What do you think is unique about the Buffalo business community?
I think the size of it. It's
Yeah,
very small and close knit, which you and I both, I think, have complained is not so great sometimes, but also it is really great. It's great because you get to see you make an impact on your community really easily. it's not so great because you can never make mistakes and have to save face. Although people here are very forgiving. Um, but other uniqueness, I mean, I think it's just like Buffalo's culture in general. And there's pros and cons to it, right? Like it's older school, the values are much more wholesome, I would say. People here really do care about their employees and whether they say it or not, do treat them and feel as if they are like friends or family or extensions of friends and family. So they take every decision that could negatively impact them super seriously. But sometimes we're behind the curve, and there isn't a lot of like innovation or outside thinking, and that probably affects the HR world to some degree as well. Like I think a lot of people here still view this function as more like personnel management, which is the old school like payroll administrative, like
Yeah.
really union, house kind of like HR function, which I think keeps us from having as many great businesses and startups and having those expand, compared to what we could otherwise. But
Yeah, I think, look, it's okay. I'll say this. It's it's nice to be in a close-knit community, but I don't think it's okay or acceptable to allow your business to be years, sometimes decades behind the times. Like I think that's so insane. It drives me crazy. I know that every business has a different amount of money that they can invest, in themselves and into innovation, however you define that. But it does kind of sadden me a little bit when you see businesses locally that just don't care at all about growing or getting better. And I got to imagine you've been brought into some of those, and it's got to be challenging.
yeah, sometimes it's crazy. Like they're using Excel to process payroll or other, and all of that's not an issue, except I guess when you think about how it like existentially and potentially impacts the business or threatens it, which is like that's costing you more time and money to do that, which means you're not being efficient, and then eventually like all those little things may impact your ability to compete with other businesses from a margin standpoint or whatever. So it is not good necessarily for the business overall to be that way. But at the same time, though, like I used to work for a business that was headquartered in New York, and spending time there, I mean, everything is just all about the almighty dollar, and also I think that's just like really unhealthy and not good for the community or people in a whole other way, or the business itself.
Yeah, obviously it happens everywhere, and we have a unique perspective because we're here living in Buffalo, growing our businesses, and here in Buffalo. And I know it happens everywhere. I just, I love Buffalo so much, and it's like you're like, come on, guys, like let's show everybody what we got. Like we have so many amazing people here, so many smart people, so many just incredible businesses, and I love when Buffalo businesses get the spotlight, whether it's throughout the state or even nationally or internationally. I just think it's awesome, and I just want people to realize like you have more inside of you. Like your business is a reflection of you as a person. Like make it better, make it the best you can be. You have one shot at this thing for the most part. Like go all in on it.
I just, you know what? I think people in Buffalo, maybe for whatever reason, just don't dream as big. And that's not a knock on them. Maybe they only care about like a certain amount of money or just impacting this community, right? Because it is such a close-knit community, and there's probably generations of their family that still live here, which is kind of a unique thing to Buffalo still, I think, as well. So their view of success or their goal is just within this community, and so it doesn't require them to scale and grow and like be a global business. Again, I don't think that's like good or bad or better or worse, but maybe that's part of it.
But be the best in your community, like, or be the
Yeah,
best that.
yeah, yeah.
How about this? How about this? I agree with what you're saying. Be the best version of yourself, right? Or try to be. And we all go through ups and downs where we're not the best versions of ourselves, and that's okay, right? We bounce back. But like I think about it, like I'm not going to name any names, but I went to lunch the other day with one of my attorneys, and I had read some reviews on this place. It was a place I always wanted to go, and then I go in and I look at the reviews, and they're just getting roasted for how bad the service is. And I'm like, oh, who knows? Let's go check it out. We go in, it was a nightmare. Like it took so long, it was crazy, and it was like this doesn't have to happen. Like it can be better than this.
It's a Buffalo specific thing. I mean,
No, Buffalo places are usually amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, who knows what's going on in that business, right? Is someone more
yeah.
worried about making money? So they're again ignoring the little steps and habits and like organizational health components that would actually lead to that happening if they just did those things. I don't know. Um,
If you could, let me ask you this. So again, you've been inside so many businesses. We're talking about like kind of like talking about like best practices and, you know, being the best version of yourself. What do you think if you could ban like one HR practice that you see frequently in clients when you first start working with them, what would it be? Like get rid of one thing that like you think a lot of companies still do.
it's more about what they're not doing, I guess.
Okay, that's fair.
I think it would be, well, or I guess I could say it's having like holding people to expectations that you never set to begin with. So not setting expectations, I guess I would say. So whether it's, I mean, a job description, which I think is one of the most like annoyingly like overemphasized and least useful components of HR. But yeah, sure, start with a job description and a document that outlines someone's job duties and more importantly, like accountabilities and what they own and how it relates to other roles. But if you aren't like clearly communicating who's responsible for what, then I don't understand how you can expect that person to like deliver on the results you want them to deliver on, and or like how you can be disappointed and hold them accountable, including like warnings or like firing them if they don't do it.
What do you think is the best way to hold people accountable? Is it, you know, because you hear like some people talk about incentives, some people talk about repercussions. What are your thoughts on those, or just in general, like what's the best way to hold people accountable?
Honestly, all right, so now, yeah, I'm gonna go deeper into this now. You got me thinking. A practice I think that everybody could do, and not this isn't even just businesses, but every single like leader or manager out there, like if you have people that report to you, is have regularly scheduled meetings with each person on your team. So like one-on-ones, right? And people hate this. It's so uncomfortable at first, but um the reason I'm saying this is because I think holding people accountable is much easier to do and can almost be put on autopilot if you have a really great relationship with your people. And so not only do they want to do their job so they don't get fired and so they make money, but they respect you and don't want to disappoint you, right? There's like this mutual accountability to one another. So, I mean, there's all sorts of evidence that proves the strength of and the health of the relationships that employees have with their leaders and mostly their direct leader is indicative of their productivity, their engagement, and really the organization's success overall. So, it's such like a soft like fluffy HR thing to say, but it is true and there's like very hard habits that you can, implement to improve that and then again everything else just kind of starts working, I think.
I think this is kind of what you're just saying, but you know, I think lots of times you see like in exit interviews that employees when they resign, they're resigning because of their relationship with their direct leader, not necessarily the company that they work for.
Yeah, that's the saying is people don't quit organizations, they quit bosses, which is more proof of the significance of that relationship. So a lot of times with clients, I'll do trainings with managers, like frontline managers on like basic HR concepts, but also like basic concepts on how to lead and tools to implement you know, um, to improve that. Whether or not they do it is another matter. But again, that starts at the top. This top leaders need to make sure that's happening and hold the leaders accountable to it. So.
What do you think are kind of like the most important things? If someone came to you and said, "Hey, Emily, you know, off like shooting from the hip, like what are the most important things I should focus on if I really want to be like a great manager or a great leader?"
Uh, I mean, I would say what I already said, which is just the quality of your relationship with your people. So, having regular check-ins with each person. Sometimes it might be 5 minutes long, sometimes it could be 30 minutes, depending on what's going on. But it just a quality relationship means trust. It means an ability to be like vulnerable with each other, which means there's better communication flowing both ways. So you're, as a leader, you're going to hear about more things that would be helpful. The person's going to be more likely to come to you about, mistakes that they made that you can catch earlier, or problems and processes that are causing barriers to them succeeding. You're also going to get feedback on like things you could be doing better as a manager or leader to be better yourself. So, and then that trust is developed. So it's way easier for you, instead of having to do like a disciplinary action or warning or a performance improvement plan or all these like scary formal documents, you can just have a conversation with the person and give them the feedback, which of course in my HR brain, you also should document in like an email to yourself. But, but that's probably going to go a long way. And basically what I'm saying is like, you will have to do so much less managing
Yeah.
if you have a quality relationship.
Yeah, it's got to be two-way. And I think a lot of people just look at it as, okay, even if I do have the one-on-ones, I'm just talking at this person the whole time, and this person is reporting to me. You have to build that trust. We've talked about this book, Radical Candor by Kim Scott. It's amazing where you can get to a point with your team or the people that report directly to you, where they feel comfortable giving you feedback. I mean, that's when you're in a good spot. When you can have a tough conversation, they can have a tough conversation with you. You guys kind of laugh at the end, and everyone gets like kind of what the accountabilities are and what needs to happen going forward, and it actually happens. It's amazing. I mean, that's incredible.
I mean, listen, it's no different than any other relationship you'd have with a human being in your life. So whether it's romantic or friendships or family, like the more trust you have, and the more vulnerable you're being, and the more honest you're being and direct you're being, probably the better it's going to be. You know.
So you work with a lot of different clients. You're dealing with a lot of different stressful situations. I'm sure you're forced to think on your feet. A lot. I know you spend a lot of time learning. You take that really seriously. You're a very curious person. Um, do you have any like, unconventional like daily routines or habits or anything that you do that you think have helped you, become the leader that you are today?
Routine person.
You're not?
No,
I would have thought you are.
that's what I know. A lot of people say that. Maybe I am, and I just can't see it. But no, I'm really not. I think, I just have either really healthy or unhealthy, I guess it could go both ways, just internal dialogue and self accountability. And so probably like all things, I'm just like projecting that into the world, including on my clients and the work that I do. Um, so I think it's just I kind of have like a moral, ethical code that I live by and think, everyone should be living by. And it's just basically like treating people with decency and respect. And with that comes the honesty and integrity stuff. And so I think just I hold myself to that standard. So maybe that's my routine, is just constantly checking in with all decisions I make against that. And, that certainly applies to the work that I do with clients or how I coach clients too.
What's your internal monologue like? Like, what's the voice like? Is it your voice or some other voice?
It's my voice, but it's pretty relentless and often not nice. That's something I
Yeah,
yeah.
I think yeah, I get that. I think a lot of people have that. How do you keep that in check? Like not, because being hypercritical of yourself can be a good thing at times because it forces you to keep trying to get better and to keep moving forward. But you don't want to let it get obviously too negative because that's obviously not healthy. Like how do you balance that?
I mean, I would say it's developed a much greater sense of humor in, the last even 3 years, but probably 3 to 5 years in starting my own business. So I can be mean to myself, but also laugh at myself more and like almost be mean in a funny way. Uh, but also it definitely has become more balanced with like, giving myself positive feedback and talking, how cool certain things are, or, just like having pride in yourself too. And that's not like, I don't think it's arrogance or ego. I was thinking about this recently, like the difference between being like arrogant or having an ego versus just truly like I think, yeah, just having like pride in yourself and what you're doing and know that you're living in alignment with your own values and virtues and just having a confidence about that. Um, Mainly just to like spread that to other people, you know. I think there's a big difference, but people don't always understand that or see that. But
Yeah, I think it's good to do that because let's be real, I don't care how long you've been doing something. You need to capitalize on those moments when you feel good about yourself, when you feel good about what you're doing, because when you least suspect it, or maybe sooner than you suspect it, you're going to get dragged back into having that feeling of being an imposter, which I think is something that like I think most people have maybe throughout the course of their careers. I've talked to like super successful people who have been doing it a really long time and you would never know it, but like sometimes they're walking into rooms thinking, am I supposed to be here? Like, why are these people listening to me? Like, I'm still trying to figure this thing out myself.
yeah, that's also very terrifying to realize, but it changed
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
my ability of what I could do when I did, which is like no one knows what they're doing. Like you keep graduating to different levels of business or circles or whatever, and you're like, oh, okay, now I'm to the people that know, right? And you get in that room and you're like, no, no one knows. I don't think there's a level of anyone knowing.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to feel good when, somebody who you really respect comes up to you and asks you for advice. It's cool. Like it means that they think that whatever you're doing is making sense or is working, and it's kind of nice to be able to share that, but then kind of quickly check yourself and be like, yeah, that was nice, but let me just make sure that I'm continuing to put myself in these positions. Um,
Integrity really, my sorry, I'll just say this. My
no, you're
dad
fine.
we said like do the next right thing and like good things will happen. And I don't know, the right thing, I guess, can be somewhat subjective, but again, it's about just like understanding what your core virtues are. And as long as you're living in alignment with those, even when it's when it sucks to do so, like
Yeah.
decisions, are going to be hard, but are the best and the most like virtuous. Yeah, I think you feel invincible and that feels really good and it helps other people.
Yeah, definitely. So tell me about your podcast. I've obviously seen a lot of the episodes. Like, how did you decide to do that? How long you been doing it? What kind of conversations do you value the most?
Yeah. So it's called Unfiltered HR, and initially, the format's definitely changed over time, including the co-host that I had previously. She just kind of moved on to other things, but it was kind of updating and translating employment law updates for employers, small business employers at first, and then it became sharing, yeah, this is legally what you have to do, but this is probably like a best practice or something you should consider. And now it's really evolved, which is something I love a lot more, kind of like this conversation is just talking about a lot of like leadership concepts. I mean, with an HR slant always, right? But I mean, I don't see how leadership and HR go hand in hand because leadership is all in relation to people and, HR is people. So, yeah, just talking with leaders about their own experiences and the concepts of things like accountability, or systems and how do you use systems to implement some of these concepts or culture, engagement. So yeah, I love just it's all relatable stuff to any business owner or leader that's out there. And so my hope is that people listen to it and feel like maybe slightly less lonely in their experience or slightly more empowered in their experience and then can go like make a hard decision or do something that they were uncertain about doing before.
Where can people find your podcast?
It's on Spotify, Unfiltered HR. It's also at lahrpartners.com, which links to Spotify or to YouTube, or you can watch the other video right there. It
And you
is,
pump it out on LinkedIn too.
yeah, LinkedIn. I do a lot of
Yeah.
writing on LinkedIn too. So if you want to, I don't want to use the word like thought leader or anything like that because it's super cringe. But again, I just try to share information that's helpful based on struggles that I see people having every day.
And how do you, so, I mean, you go into all these conversations with different people, you walk into businesses, but you're really busy, but I know you spend a lot of time um, on learning. And I know you listen to a lot of podcasts, you read a lot of books. Um, kind of talk to me about like how do you do that? Like, do you have time set aside each day? Just kind of do it when you want to? Like, what are you focusing on? What are your favorite podcasts? Like, what do you think you get the most out of?
Yeah. Well, this is where I would say again, I'm not very routine driven. So if I'm mowing my lawn or, getting ready in the morning or something, I'll usually have a podcast on. My favorite way to learn, and this is why honestly, it's kind of actually crazy because yeah, my business, I get something out of it in terms of like, financial transactions with clients, but my clients are the greatest source of learning for me because I get to see these real world experiences across, you know, all these different leaders, all these different scenarios, in every type of business that you could imagine, right? I work with restaurants, law firms, medical practices, manufacturing businesses, and it's just endless scenarios that are constantly challenging, my knowledge. But also, yeah, I'm learning so much from even when clients do the right thing, or good things, like I get to learn from that. So podcasts are similar. I love podcasts where it's individual people being interviewed and sharing their own experiences, whether it's about business or just life, and applying it to my own and kind of drawing conclusions from there.
There's a million podcasts out there, and sometimes I'll have people say to me like, "Oh, I don't know where to start." And I mean, it's like you just got to pick some and start listening. And then once you start going down that rabbit hole, you'll probably be hooked if you're a curious person. And I've been like down these rabbit holes about AI lately. And I can't get enough of it. What do you think is going to happen with AI, or how do you think it's going to change business? I mean, it's already changing business, and if you don't realize it, especially if you're a business owner, you need to like wake up like right now and start figuring out how it can help your business. But what are your thoughts on AI, whether it pertains to, business, HR, leadership? You can handle it any way you want.
Yeah, I am, I know we've talked about this a lot and I've changed my mind a lot. I'm more on the kind of anti-AI train again. I don't know if we talked about this. There was a small Harvard study recently that really demonstrated in a very short time, and these are with adults that already have like developed brains, its impact on their aptitude, but like appetite for critical thinking. And very quickly, people were just totally selling out or like outsourcing their own critical thinking ability, copying and pasting answers, not even reviewing them. So I think that's really bad for humanity. But I think it can be used as a tool, and I've used it in my business as a tool to not replace what I do, but just another idea or another draft of something after I've already drafted and used my like own critical mind to do it. I think that is kind of where I stand in terms of a healthy, best way to use it. I do think there's certain things that humans will never be able to be replaced in doing, and I think things like leadership are certainly one of them. I mean, I've used AI as a coach and maybe borderline therapist at times, and it is really nice. But it's also like kind of, and they even say it's overly programmed to make you feel good about your own decisions and about yourself. And so maybe it's not being as honest as it can be. And also, nothing beats face to face, like human to human interaction. And I think there's like an energy exchange that we can't even, quantify at this point that goes on in that situation. So yeah, leadership in HR, I think it'll help from a like guidance and compliance standpoint, but I don't think it'll replace like person to person, human to human.
Yeah, there's a side note. There are prompts, and if you ever want them, I can give them to you for like say ChatGPT Pro to make it not be that nice to you and to be more objective. Do
You
you
would know
think?
that, yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you think that being, well, in your words, anti-AI is akin to being anti-internet, like in the 90s?
Yeah, I think you've said this. I don't know. I wasn't, an adult in the 90s. So, I'm not anti-AI, I guess I'll say, but I think it's like all great things. And like the internet has turned out to be like it's done amazing things, but it's also done horrible, awful things for society. And the pendulum has swung, and hopefully like we end up somewhere in the middle before we destroy ourselves, and that's probably how AI is gonna play out too.
Yeah, it's everyone's saying it, but I think it is true that AI is not going to replace humans, but people with AI are going to replace people without it. And I look at it more as like
Yeah.
it's like a life hack, right? Like you can't use it to, like you said, like, replace your brain. Like you still need to use your brain. You still need to critically think, but it can help you complete like remedial, like, or like BS tasks that no one wants to be doing anyways a lot quicker. This stuff with like ChatGPT, like agent like the AI agent stuff is crazy, where it can like book tickets for you and all that kind of stuff. Like, who really wants to spend the time to go through the Delta website and pick the seats and do all this kind of stuff if it knows exactly what you want, when you want to leave, what airports you like? I mean, let it do things like that, right? Let it help you if you have writer's block. Let it help you if you're a small business, right? Research how to put together a marketing plan, so maybe you don't have to spend $100,000 on a marketing agency, and even if it's not as good, maybe it still helps you make that incremental growth, like with your business.
Yeah, if marketing's not your business and you just need to do marketing for your business, then you're not replacing that. But yeah, I mean, I guess as long as we're not, maybe this is a good way of putting it, maybe as long as we're not having it replace the functionality of what it means to be human, like feel, emote, relate. Like I play tennis at this club, and there's like a bike path that goes by it, and I was thinking about this yesterday. There's people that go by on these like motorized scooters and motorized bikes now, and like, no one's actually pedaling a bike or and I was like, had this thought like, okay, we don't have to use our bodies now because we have these like robots and technology using it, and soon we're not going to use our brains because AI will just use it. It's like, what is living going to be? Like, we're just replacing, what will being alive even mean? Like, you're not even using your brain or your physical body anymore. Like, what are you? You just
It's true. I mean, think about it. You sit on your couch, you hit the remote, you can watch anything you want. You don't have to leave. You go on your phone, the food comes to your side door. You don't even have to meet the person anymore. You select
no,
the
no.
hey, don't you dare ring my doorbell option. Leave it here. Yeah, and then you get on your scooter and you go wherever you're going. Yeah, it's pretty
You
crazy.
just exist, and that brings like,
Yeah,
what's the meaning of life or the purpose of life, I guess, and like
yeah.
that makes that
No, it's
question
true.
more circumstantial. I don't know.
Yeah. So we're not super excited about AI, but what is one thing that you're like maybe most excited about in your own business in Buffalo? What's got you like, kind of amped up these days?
Hmm. I mean, I guess without like, going too political on anything, I'm just interested to see like the past 5 years have just been crazy from a human standpoint in terms of, yeah, like politics, but just like, opinions and regulation. And it's been, we've been on one end of the extreme, and now it seems we're swinging to the other. And so um I guess I'm excited in both a scared but also like hopeful way to see like where we end up. And again, I just like find humans and behavior and everything super interesting. And every single client of mine I consider to be kind of like an incubator or like, microcosm of the greater society. And so I'm just interested to see where it all goes.
Awesome. I think we have a lot to be excited about. I mean, obviously there's so much uncertainty in the world and even in our own community these days, but I'm confident that it will end up in a good place and the pendulum will swing back to where it needs to be. Um, so I like to finish each podcast with kind of a different question depending on who my guest is. Um, and because I know how much time you like to spend, learning about leadership, I wanted to ask you if you could spend like 1 hour at a coffee shop with one leader in the world, dead or alive, and this person has to just answer truthfully any question you ask, like who would it be and why?
It's not a leader in the traditional sense, and
That's
certainly not
okay.
business, but I have a very clear answer to this question that I talk to people about all the time, actually. And it's Anthony Bourdain, actually.
Oh, great answer.
Yeah.
Oh, oh,
I just think he's like or he was obviously a deeply feeling but deeply like intelligent person, and he just got it and saw things. And talk about like understanding what it means to be alive, which is also what makes his death and the way he died so horribly disappointing and sad. But yeah, definitely Anthony Bourdain.
amazing answer. Well, look, this has been amazing. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. I just want to thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, John. It was great, and I look forward to the off-air conversations more and
All
together.
right. Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, John.
See ya. Thanks for listening to Angles. If this episode made you think, smile, or see something in a new way, follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a review and share it with friends. You can also follow us on social media. Angles is produced by Brett Tuttle. I'm John Richmond. See you next time.